What actually happens if your e-foil battery suddenly dies while you're far from shore? Do you sink, drift, or get stranded in the middle of the ocean? E-foils have revolutionized water sports, allowing riders to glide silently above the water using electric propulsion and hydrofoil technology. But like any battery-powered machine, e-foils eventually run out of power. For beginners especially, this raises an important safety question. What happens if the battery dies while you're far from shore? Unlike jet skis that float with engines off, an e-foil rider stands on a board connected to a submerged motor and hydrofoil. In this documentary-style breakdown, we explore exactly what happens when the battery runs out, how the board behaves, and the safest ways riders handle this situation in real-world conditions. 3. The moment the battery runs out. When an e-foil battery runs low, most boards warn the rider well before shutting down. The handheld remote usually displays battery percentage, and many systems activate low power modes to extend ride time. However, if the battery eventually reaches zero, the electric motor simply stops producing thrust. At that moment, the hydrofoil loses forward momentum and the board gently settles back onto the water surface. Instead of flying above the water, the rider is now floating like on a regular surfboard. There is no sudden sinking or dangerous drop. The board is designed to remain buoyant even without power. Riders typically feel the board slow down, touch the water, and transition into a normal floating position. 2. Paddling back to shore. Once the motor stops, the e-foil becomes essentially a large surfboard with a hydrofoil underneath. Riders can lie down or kneel and paddle back towards shore, just like on a traditional surfboard. However, paddling an e-foil can be slightly more challenging because the board is heavier than a normal surfboard due to the battery and motor system. Distance also becomes an important factor. If riders venture too far offshore without monitoring battery levels, returning can take time and effort. This is why experienced riders constantly watch their battery percentage and plan routes carefully. Many recommend turning back once the battery reaches around 30 to 40% to ensure enough power for the return trip. With proper planning and awareness, running out of battery becomes more of an inconvenience than a dangerous emergency. So, if an e-foil battery dies in the middle of the ocean, the situation isn't nearly as dramatic as it might sound. The board simply settles onto the water, allowing the rider to float safely and paddle back to shore. The key is awareness, monitoring battery levels, planning routes carefully, and respecting the limits of electric propulsion. If you want more real-world tests, safety guides, and deep dives into electric water sports technology, subscribe now, hit the like button, and comment if you'd feel comfortable riding an e-foil far from shore. Because the more you understand your gear, the safer and more exciting your adventures on water become.